Alrighty, gang. Welcome back to the Active Self-Protection Podcast. Excuse me. I'm in automatic mode. Steven, I'm so sorry.
Palm pepper spray is next generation OC spray. It's hot at 1.4% major capsaicinoids, and its modular design means you can customize it exactly to you. 3 different setups, lots of different color combinations. You can make it exactly as you like. And the flip top safety prevents accidental discharges. It's 10 to 12 foot range and 25 half-second blasts. Make sure that you can keep that long range eye poke at long range. I trust Palm OC and I recommend it for everyone for self-defense.
Welcome back to the Gutowski Files. Everyone is sick at my house, and I'm getting sick, I think, so I'm a little under the weather.
This is an active self-protection podcast.
That's true.
It's one of them.
It is, but it is also the Gutowski Files. Anyway, folks, my lack of professionalism aside, welcome back to the Gutowski Files. I'm your host, Mike Williver, and with us, as always, is the founder of thereload.com and the host of Weekly Reload Podcast, Stephen Gutowski. Stephen, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. Sounds like things are a little rough for you.
Yeah, we just got done recording with John some badge cams, and I bet 5 minutes after that, I started feeling that, whatever you call that feeling when you feel like you're getting sick. It's not great. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, my car's not working quite right, and I have to do CNN, the morning show tomorrow. So hopefully when I go out there to start my car, it'll actually start.
Do you go to a studio to do that?
Yeah. Go into the DC studio. I can do it from home, but obviously they prefer you to go in studio. It's a better experience usually for the audience. So
whose show are you going to be on?
CNN this morning, somewhere around 7:45, 8 a.m. Eastern tomorrow.
Very good. Do you know what you're there to talk about?
We're going to talk about the NRA corruption case in New York, which is actually proceeding forward, and the trial is going to begin next week. So it's a big, important case. I'm sure we will talk about it in the show at some point, but
absolutely.
And we've talked about it in the past, of course, and some of the consequences of the allegations that are in play. But that's what we'll be covering a little bit on CNN tomorrow morning. So
very good.
Tune in.
Has the Weekly Reload podcast come out this week? And if so, who was on it?
Hasn't come out yet, but we have Robert Leiter, who's an associate professor at George Mason University at the Antonin Scalia Law School there. And we're going to be talking about actually something related to what our main topic here on today's podcast is about. So if you enjoy what we're talking about here, you might want to check out the Weekly Reload podcast when that comes out next Monday for public, and then it'll be out on Sunday for Reload members, of course. But it has to do with the situation in California with some of these Bruin response laws and sort of the asymmetry of legal liability between people who are operating underneath these laws that are likely unconstitutional and the people who are enacting and enforcing the likely unconstitutional laws. So it's an interesting discussion. I think it's just something that's been on my mind a lot since this story that we're going to talk about broke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, we are here to talk about it. Let me read the headline for the kind viewers and listeners. Over at thereload.com, the article is entitled "California's Sweeping Gun Carry Restrictions Go into Effect Despite Court Ruling Them Unconstitutional." That is by our own Stephen Gutowski. So, Stephen, I think people think, well, a court has made a ruling. That should be the law of the land, or at least of that district. So what gives? Why is it going into effect anyway?
Yeah. So what happened here was a district court judge in the federal court system ruled that California's gun carry law, its Bruin response law, which basically, honestly, it effectively makes gun carry illegal in California, even if you have a permit. So if people remember, Bruin was about how places like California and New York and a few other states essentially didn't issue gun carry permits to anybody who wanted them or could qualify for them. Like you could pass a background check or get the training, but they would still deny you if the government official didn't feel like you had a good reason to carry a gun, right? That's what Bruin was about. And in Bruin, the Supreme Court said, you have a right to carry a gun in public for self-defense under the Second Amendment. And so this permitting scheme is unconstitutional, right? But it didn't answer every question about the Second Amendment, of course, or how far these protections extend. And one of the things it talked about are sensitive places restrictions, so that the Supreme Court said you can have some sensitive places restrictions if they're in line with, historical tradition of banning guns at certain locations like courthouses or polling places, things of that nature. But you can't just make everything a sensitive place. You can't make the whole island of Manhattan, was an example that the court gave, can't just be declared a sensitive place because it's crowded and has a police force to ostensibly protect people.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we've seen since then, as we talked about a lot on the show, is just a lot of these states that were affected by this ruling have passed a bunch of new sensitive places restrictions. And one of the big ones they've done is what gun rights advocates at least call the vampire rule, which is where all publicly accessible private property, so stores and restaurants, things like that, are off limits to carry even by people with permits unless they explicitly say you can carry there. So they post a sign or something like that. So it's essentially a reversal of how things have been traditionally everywhere up to this point. And that has a very expansive impact.
That never made any sense to me at all. Like, again, we talked about this before, but I think it's worth reiterating. Most people, I mean, let's be honest, the average American isn't thinking about gun laws all day long. It's not something that's in the front of their mind.
Mm-hmm.
So a business owner wouldn't know. They could be totally cool with having people who are armed in their store, but they wouldn't know to put a sign in their front window saying it's okay. It's a really preposterous thing, in my opinion. The whole idea of it is kind of silly.